My name is Amanda Cohen. We are at Dirt Candy in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The restaurant is 15 years old. We were the first all-vegetable restaurant, certainly opened in New York, if not in the U.S. and anywhere else in the world. And that's really our focus is vegetables. Since we first opened, we've seen this huge change in vegetarian dining. I mean, frankly, I'm not even sure we call it vegetarian dining anymore. Now it's, plant-based or plant-forward. And you're doing this documentary on it, right? This would not have happened probably 15 years ago. Diners are really sort of now, I think, more open to trying anything. What we're seeing, and in particular, I can only speak to my experience from the restaurant, but we get a lot of omnivores who are just curious and are maybe eating plant-based once or twice a week. They're adding it into their rotation, into their diet. Whereas when I first opened 15 years ago, the bulk of our customers were vegetarians and vegans, and that was their diet. And, they were, our main customers. And then we'd get some omnivores here and there. But now we're seeing that pretty much flipped, and we're getting all kinds of eaters in the restaurant. So people are really curious about vegetables and vegetarian cuisine. There were sort of three tracks of how I don't know how far deep into the documentary you guys have gone, but 3 tracks of vegetarianism that started in the States, and one was for religious reasons, and that's where you had like all those dairy restaurants. Certainly there was a big question, amongst Orthodox Jews of whether eating animals were okay or not okay. Deep, Talmudic dive. And some of the answers were, no, it wasn't. And so we ended up with the dairy restaurants. And then you had, so that was, eating for religion. And you can see that in lots of different cultures as well. And then you had the health eaters, right? And that came out of like Kellogg and Graham and all the meat is bad. Too much stimulation for your diet is going to make you go wild and want to have sex all the time. And that was really focused on the health, and that continued for many, many years. But you always had the environmental reason as well, and that came out of the 60s with the hippie movement, right? And so you had those 3 reasons really for the bulk of the vegetarian restaurants in the States. That's a very, very quick summary. And I think now you still have those reasons, and they're probably still equally split. I had been working in the city for many, many years. And I had kind of plateaued at where I could work in the city as a vegetarian. I had gone back and forth a bit between mainstream restaurants and vegetarian restaurants. And at the time, there really weren't that many vegetarian restaurants, and they weren't that different from each other. And so I'd sort of, built up my career and ended up as an executive chef at a couple of places. And I realized that if I wanted to keep learning or trying to do my own thing, I had 2 choices. I could either open my own restaurant, or I could go work in a more omnivore-centric restaurant, one with a lot of meat, which was fine. I just wasn't really interested in it. And so this opportunity came up to open my own restaurant, and I was like, great. And then I was like, what am I going to do? I knew I wanted it to be vegetarian, but I wasn't really interested in sort of the vegetarianism that we had seen in restaurants up until now. And I'd had this epiphany one day where I was like, oh, wow, there's like thousands of steak restaurants and thousands of chicken restaurants and, all these fish restaurants. But there isn't a single restaurant dedicated to vegetables. And that was my, $1 billion idea. I've not made $1 billion from it yet. But it was sort of the impetus for the restaurant and why I decided to open it. I was like, I have this voice and I have this idea of what food can be. And a lot of the vegetarian restaurants kind of were for people who were eating for like an ideology, right? They weren't necessarily eating there because it was good food. That didn't mean the restaurants didn't have good food. There was lots of great vegetarian restaurants all over the country, all over the world. But that wasn't necessarily their primary focus. Their primary focus was the ideology. Was it because it was religion-based or environmentally based or politically based or health-based? And I really wanted to put the food at the front and be like, this is the only reason we exist, is to put good food on the plate. I think it stated on my website, and it probably still does for many years, we don't care what you ate for breakfast or for lunch or for dinner. Here, we're just asking that you eat vegetables. amateur cooks didn't know how to cook vegetables because we were never taught how to cook vegetables, right? This wasn't, I think everybody grew up eating, maybe not now. The kids have, parents who are better cooks, but, it was like we just got to get them to eat vegetables, put them in the oven or boil them and put them on the plate and make them eat it. And there wasn't a lot of recipes that were dedicated to vegetables or cookbooks that were only about vegetables. So you kind of were struggling because meat was the center of the plate, right? Meat was the focus. That meat was king. And so it felt like if you were going to eat vegetables, you should come to a restaurant that really cared about them, because most restaurants didn't care about the vegetables. They were just, the side dish. They were something, to bulk up and make that main entree look bigger. Vegetables are hard. And, you can't just throw them in the oven and expect them. I mean, you can. They can be very delicious when they come out of an oven. But if you want to serve them in a restaurant, you kind of, have to do a little bit more. But that also doesn't mean don't be afraid of them. One of the things that was so great about Dirt Candy when we opened was there were no rules. We were writing the rules on vegetables. We always kind of felt like we were pioneers in the Wild West of vegetables. So we got to experiment and try things. And, our kitchen felt more like a lab some days than a professional kitchen. That's what made it really fun. And over time, it became much easier for us. And we have a whole sort of dictionary and lexicon of what we can do with vegetables and ideas. And that's what I want young cooks to understand, that yes, it's hard, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I think what we're going towards a lot more with restaurants in general, and maybe Dirt Candy in 15 years, is one, this won't seem so weird, right? So when I opened an all vegetable restaurant, vegetable cuisine seemed pretty far off the track. And a lot of people came to us because we were like, oh, that's an oddity. Might as well go try it. I have a meal to eat. And over time, that's become, more and more mainstream and not that odd. And I think that's what we're going to continue to, where restaurants are going to be as plant-based focused as they are meat focused. And it's just going to live side by side in restaurants, and it's not going to be a big deal. I think if you're a chef and you're like, oh, what do I do? I have to put a vegetable entree on. You have to, treat the vegetable, think about the vegetable as being as important as a piece of meat. So yeah, you do have to find great vegetables, just as you would find great pieces of meat. But they are all over the place. Really, you can find them in the supermarket, you can find them in the farmer's market, you can find them off the back of your purveyor's truck. You just have to kind of know what to ask for. For us, let's say we're always asking for a very specific size. They're usually happy to find it, or we pick through it and find what we need. And then I think what you have to do is figure out how you're going to make this as flavorful as you would a piece of meat. Look, nobody wants a steamed carrot on a plate, right? But a carrot that's been roasted and then deep fried and has all kinds of spices on it, that's as delicious and as fulfilling and satisfying as a piece of meat. You just have to not think of it as, oh, this is a boring carrot. What do I do? You think, oh, this is an exciting carrot. How can I make it even better? I think what's really exciting right now about this time is how open customers are to eating what we're putting on the plate. 15 years ago, we used to get a lot of, I don't know, I've never had a vegetable before or a vegetarian meal. And, I'd be like, really? Because I bet you've had a bowl of cereal and that's vegetarian, or, a piece of, cheese pizza. And they'd be like, I guess so. And we don't see that anymore. And so it allows us in the kitchen to actually be more creative, to do more sort of outrageous things, and to really have this back and forth dialogue with our customers where they're like, wow, show me what you can do, as opposed to, please don't show me what you can do. Mostly I get inspired from my cooks. They're bringing all the ideas to the table, and I'm just helping them figure out how to put it on a plate. My favorite season to cook is probably winter, because even though, let's all face it, vegetables are much better in the summer and the fall, and it's exciting in spring, but winter really allows us to sort of, bring our creative freaks out and see what we can do. And there are these long winter months, and so, come the end of March, when you can still get people excited about a root vegetable, be like, oh, a butternut squash, I'm still so excited to see that. It's pretty amazing, and I feel that we've done a really good job. Unique vegetables? I don't play in the unique sphere. I think actually everybody knows all the vegetables. Sometimes there's very random different kinds here or there. And sometimes there's vegetables that they pretend that they don't want to know, like a rutabaga. Everybody's like, I've never met that. What we actually tried to do at Dirt Candy was take the most basic vegetables and turn them into something sort of, people think of them as ordinary and turn them into something extraordinary, because it was already a weird enough experience coming. Now we're in my big restaurant, but I used to have this very, very tiny little restaurant. So with like chairs that only had 3 legs and tiny tables, and to get to your table, you had to move 7 others, which was all the tables I had. So the whole dining room was like a mishmash constantly. We just figured, you know what? Let's just start with the most basic vegetables and not scare them off with like something that people haven't don't know how to even approach. And it's always been sort of my philosophy in cooking that if you want to get people to eat food, you have to start with what they know. One of the sort of philosophies of Dirt Candy is that food should be fun. And it's always been really important to me. I hate going to a restaurant where, it's all fancy and you sit down and everybody's quiet and they're talking in hushed tones and you're like, I guess I like this. I don't know. I'm so intimidated. I think I just want to cry. It's overwhelming. And I've always wanted Dirt Candy to feel like a party. I want people to come, have the best time. And I mean that even if they don't love the food. Not everybody loves the food here, but if they love the environment and the servers and sort of, how we've put it all together, that's incredibly important. I'm just as much a restaurateur as I am a chef. So if it doesn't feel like a party to them, then I've failed in my job. Plant-based food even as a term, it existed, but the idea that we're talking about it now and it's become sort of this interest piece and you see it in articles everywhere, and even this whole fake meat technical revolution, it's pretty exciting to be a part of this, and it's pretty exciting to see where we're going to go and where we've come from. And I still feel a little bit like a pioneer in the Wild West. There's so many new things to discover.